The rain was falling hard on the windows of Wellington Private Hospital that cold November evening. Maria Santos walked quickly through the long white hallway, her worn-out nursing shoes making soft sounds on the clean floor. She was 28 years old, with dark brown hair tied in a simple bun and tired eyes that showed years of hard work and sleepless nights. Maria had been working at this hospital for 3 years now. She was one of the best nurses they had, always gentle with patients, always ready to help, always staying late when others wanted to go home. But nobody at the hospital knew anything about her past. She kept her secrets locked deep inside her heart, hidden behind her soft smile and kind words. Tonight was supposed to be a normal night shift. Maria was assigned to the private wing of the hospital, where the richest patients stayed. These rooms were different from the rest of the hospital. They had expensive furniture, beautiful paintings on the walls, and large windows that showed the city lights below. The patients here were powerful people who were used to getting whatever they wanted. Maria checked her list and saw that she had a new patient tonight. His name was Victor Hammond, and he was 72 years old. He had come to the hospital because of heart problems, but the notes on his file warned the nurses to be careful. They said he was difficult, demanding, and had already made 2 nurses cry in just one day. She took a deep breath and pushed open the door to room 501. The room was the biggest in the private wing. There was a grand piano sitting in the corner near the window, its black surface shining under the soft lights. Maria noticed it immediately, and something inside her chest tightened. She looked away quickly. Victor Hammond was sitting up in his hospital bed. He was a tall man, even while sitting, with silver hair combed back neatly and sharp blue eyes that seemed to look right through people. His face was hard, with deep lines that showed a lifetime of making tough decisions. He was wearing silk pajamas instead of a hospital gown because he had refused to wear what he called cheap hospital clothing. When Maria entered, he did not greet her. He simply looked at her with those cold eyes and said nothing for a long moment. She felt like he was measuring her, deciding if she was worth his time. Maria smiled politely and said good evening to him. She told him she would be his nurse for the night and asked if there was anything he needed. Victor made a sound of disapproval. He told her that what he needed was to get out of this prison. He said hospitals were for people who had given up on life, and he had not given up on anything. Maria nodded calmly. She had dealt with difficult patients before. She told him she understood and said she would try to make his stay as comfortable as possible. She walked over to check his IV drip and adjust his pillows. Victor watched her every movement with suspicion. When she reached for his blood pressure monitor, he grabbed her wrist suddenly. His grip was surprisingly strong for a man his age. He asked her if she knew who he was. Maria looked at his hand on her wrist but did not pull away. She said yes, she had read his file. She knew he was Victor Hammond. Victor laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. He said reading a file meant nothing. He told her he had built an empire from nothing. He had started with $200 in his pocket at age 18, and now he owned companies on 4 continents. He said he had dined with presidents and kings. And now he was stuck in a hospital room being treated like an ordinary old man. Maria gently freed her wrist from his grip. She told him that in the hospital, every patient was important, and she would give him the same care and respect she gave to everyone else. Something flickered in Victor's eyes. It might have been surprise or maybe respect. Most people either feared him or tried to please him with empty flattery. This young nurse did neither. He pointed toward the piano in the corner and asked her if she knew what that was. Maria's face changed for just a second. Her eyes went to the piano and there was something there, some emotion she quickly hid. She said yes, it was a piano. She asked if he played. Victor smiled for the first time, but it was a sad smile. He said he used to play when he was young, before he became too busy making money to have time for beautiful things. He told her his doctor thought the piano might help calm him down. She had said music was good for the heart. So they brought this piano to his room, but now it just sat there, silent and useless. Maria herself with organizing the medicines on his bedside table. She said that was nice, and that music could indeed be healing. Victor was watching her closely. He had not become a billionaire without learning to read people. He noticed how she avoided looking at the piano, how her hands trembled slightly when she passed near it. He asked her if she played. Maria's hand stopped moving. She said no, she did not play. But the way she said it, the quick answer, the way she would not meet his eyes, told Victor a different story. He told her she was lying. He said he had spent 50 years in business, making deals and reading people, and he knew when someone was not telling the truth. Maria finished organizing the medicines and picked up her clipboard. She told him she needed to go check on other patients and that she would be back in an hour to check his vitals. She turned to leave, but Victor's voice stopped her. He told her to wait. He said he was not finished with her yet. Maria stopped at the door but did not turn around. Victor's voice had changed. It was softer now but still commanding. He asked her why she was afraid of that piano. Maria's shoulders stiffened. She told him she was not afraid. She said she simply could not play. Victor said that was not the same thing. He told her there was a difference between not being able to do something and being afraid to do it. He asked her again what she was hiding. Maria finally turned around. Her eyes were shining with something, maybe tears, maybe anger. She told him with all respect that her personal life was none of his business. She said she was there to take care of his health, nothing more. Victor nodded slowly. He said she could leave for now, but he warned her that he was a patient man and he always got what he wanted. He said he would find out her secret eventually. Maria left the room quickly, her heart beating fast. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Her hands were shaking. Why did there have to be a piano in his room? She had worked so hard to run away from that part of her life. The memories came flooding back whether she wanted them or not. The small apartment in Manila where she grew up. Her mother's hands, rough from washing other people's clothes, saving every coin to pay for Maria's piano lessons. The hours and hours of practice. The competitions. The praise from teachers who said she had a gift from God. And then the accident. Maria pushed the memories away and wiped her eyes. That life was over. That girl who played piano was gone. Now she was just Maria the nurse, and that was all she wanted to be. But as she walked down the hallway to check on her other patients, she could not shake the feeling that Victor Hammond was going to change everything. The next few days were difficult. Victor was indeed the most demanding patient Maria had ever had. He complained about everything. The food was terrible. The bed was uncomfortable. The doctors were incompetent. The other nurses were stupid. Only Maria seemed to be able to handle him without losing her patience. And every night, he would try to learn more about her. He asked about her family, her education, her dreams. Maria answered some questions with short replies and avoided others completely. But she noticed that Victor's questions about the piano never stopped. One evening, she found him sitting in the wheelchair by the window, looking out at the rain. The piano was beside him, and his hand was resting on its closed lid. He looked older somehow and sad. Maria asked him if he was feeling all right. Victor did not look at her. He said he was thinking about death. He told her that when a person got old and sick, they started thinking about all the things they never did. He said he had made billions of dollars, but he had never learned to play this piano properly. He never had time. There was always another deal, another meeting, another flight to catch. Maria stood quietly, listening. Victor continued. He said his wife had loved music. She had died 15 years ago, but he still remembered how she used to play for him in the evenings. After she was gone, he could not bear to hear piano music anymore. It hurt too much, so he buried himself in work even deeper. He finally looked at Maria. He told her he knew she could play. He said he did not know how he knew, but he was certain of it. He asked her why she was hiding such a gift. Maria felt her walls starting to crack. This was the longest conversation Victor had ever had without being rude or demanding. She could see the loneliness in his eyes, the regret, and somehow it touched her own wounds. She told him that some gifts came with too much pain. Victor nodded like he understood perfectly. He said he knew about pain. He told her that every person walking this earth was carrying wounds that others could not see. He said the only question was what they did with that pain. He turned back to the window and told her she could go. He said he was tired. Maria left the room, but something had shifted between them. She was no longer just a nurse, and he was no longer just a difficult patient. They were two broken people who had recognized something familiar in each other. That night, Maria lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling. The rain was still falling outside her window. She thought about Victor and his dead wife. She thought about her own mother, who had sacrificed everything for Maria's dream. And she thought about the accident that had taken everything away. She looked at her hands in the darkness. They had healed long ago, at least physically. The doctors said there was no medical reason she could not play anymore. But every time she tried, she felt the fear of remembering, the fear of losing everything again. Maybe Victor was right. Maybe she was not unable to play. Maybe she was just afraid. But was she ready to face that fear? She did not know the answer yet. 3 weeks passed, and Victor Hammond's condition improved slowly. The doctors were pleased with his progress, but they wanted him to stay longer for observation. Victor grumbled and complained, but secretly, he did not mind so much anymore. His conversations with Maria had become the highlight of his days. The old billionaire had learned more about his nurse in those 3 weeks than he had learned about most people in years. He discovered that Maria had grown up poor in the Philippines. Her father had left when she was 5 years old, leaving her mother to raise her alone. Her mother worked as a washing clothes by hand until her fingers cracked and bled, but she had dreams for her daughter. Maria once told Victor about how her mother had heard her singing a melody when she was 7 years old. The melody was something Maria had heard from a radio in a neighbor's house. Her mother had recognized something special in that moment. She started saving money, coin by coin, hiding it in a tin can under their small bed. When Maria was 8, her mother took her to an old music teacher in their neighborhood. The teacher's name was Maestro. He was a retired concert pianist who had fallen on hard times and now taught children for small fees. When he heard Maria play for the first time, using just the simple melodies he showed her, his eyes had filled with tears. Victor listened to these stories with growing interest. He asked Maria what happened next. Maria told him that Maestro had refused to accept money from her mother. He said Maria's talent was payment enough. He taught her for free for the next 10 years. Under his guidance, she became one of the most promising young pianists in the Philippines. She won competition after competition. Newspapers wrote about her. Music schools from other countries sent letters offering scholarships. Victor could see the light in Maria's eyes when she talked about those times, but he also saw how that light faded when the story reached a certain point. She would always stop talking and find an excuse to leave. There was something she was not telling him. One afternoon, Victor decided to push further. He had spent a lifetime pushing, and old habits were hard to break. When Maria came to give him his afternoon medication, he asked her directly what had ended her piano career. Maria's face went pale. She put down the medicine cup and told him she had already explained. She said she simply chose a different path. Victor shook his head. He told her that was not an answer. He said people did not walk away from a gift like that without a reason. He had done his research. Yes, he had asked his assistant to look into her background. He knew she had been accepted to the Royal Academy of Music in London with a full scholarship. That was one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. People would kill for that opportunity. But she had never gone. Instead, she had become a nurse and moved to America. Maria's hands were shaking again. She asked him why he cared so much about her past. Victor was quiet for a moment. Then he told her something he had never told anyone else. He said his wife had also given up her music. She had been a violinist, quite talented when they met. But Victor was young and ambitious, and he had convinced her that his business was more important. She had put down her violin to support his dreams. She never complained, but Victor knew she had lost something. And when she died, he realized she had never gotten it back. He told Maria he could not change the past. He could not give back her music. But maybe, if he understood what had happened to Maria, he could do something. He was not sure what. He just felt it was important. Maria sat down in the chair beside his bed. She had never sat down in a patient's room before. Nurses were supposed to stay standing, always ready to move. But her legs felt weak. She told him the story she had never told anyone at the hospital. It had happened 11 years ago when she was 17. She had just received the acceptance letter from the Royal Academy. It was the happiest day of her life. Her mother had cried with joy. Maestro had opened a bottle of cheap wine to celebrate. The whole neighborhood came to congratulate her. But they had no money for the plane ticket to London. Even with the full scholarship, there were other expenses. Housing, food, clothes, books. Maria needed to travel to Manila for her visa interview, and even that short trip was expensive for them. Her mother had taken extra work. She washed clothes from morning until midnight. She cleaned houses. She did anything she could to earn more money. Maria had tried to help, but her mother insisted she focus on practice. She said Maria's hands were too precious to be washed in soap and dirty water. One night, Maria's mother was walking home late from a rich family's house. She had been paid for a week of work, and she was carrying all the money in her pocket. It was not much by most standards, but for them, it was everything. Maria stopped talking. Her voice had become very small. Victor waited patiently. Maria continued. She said some men had attacked her mother on the street. They wanted the money. Her mother had tried to fight back because that money was for Maria's future, for Maria's dream. The men had beaten her badly. A neighbor had found her lying in the street and brought her home. Maria remembered opening the door and seeing her mother covered in blood, barely conscious. They had no money for a good hospital. The local clinic did what they could, but it was not enough. Maria's mother survived, but she had suffered permanent damage. She could no longer walk properly. She could no longer work. The money for London was gone. The dream was gone. Maria had to find work immediately to support them both. Victor's face had changed as he listened. The hardness was gone. In its place was something softer, something human. Maria told him she had tried to keep practicing. Even while working multiple jobs, she would find pianos in churches and schools and practice whenever she could. But then something else happened. She looked down at her hands. She said there had been a fire at one of the factories where she worked. She was trapped inside for almost an hour before rescuers could reach her. The heat and flames had damaged her hands badly. The doctors said she was lucky to keep them at all. After months of healing and therapy, she could use her hands normally for daily tasks. But the fine motor control needed for professional piano playing was affected. At least that was what she told herself. Victor leaned forward. He asked what she meant by that. Maria admitted that the doctors had actually said her recovery was remarkable. They said physically, her hands should be able to do anything they did before. But every time she tried to play, she felt the fire again. She felt the fear. Her fingers would freeze up and she could not make them move. She looked at Victor with tears in her eyes. She said it was not really her hands that were broken. It was something inside her. Every time she sat at a piano, she remembered everything she had lost. Her dream, her mother's sacrifice, the girl she used to be. It hurt too much. Victor sat back in his bed. He understood now. This was not about ability. It was about trauma. Maria had locked away her gift because it was connected to too much pain. He asked her where her mother was now. Maria said she had died 5 years ago. The injuries from the attack had weakened her body over the years. Maria had been holding her hand when she passed. Her mother's last words were an apology. She said she was sorry she could not give Maria her dream. Maria told Victor those words haunted her every day. Her mother had done everything for her, and in the end, she had apologized. She had nothing to apologize for. She was the bravest, most loving person Maria had ever known. Victor was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle. He told Maria that her mother sounded like an incredible woman. He said he wished he could have met her. Maria smiled sadly. She said her mother would have been terrified of someone like Victor. She was a simple woman who was scared of rich people. Victor almost laughed. He said maybe that was wise. Rich people could be terrible. He included himself in that statement. Maria wiped her eyes and stood up. She apologized for taking so much of his time with her story. She said she should get back to work. Victor told her to wait. He said he had something to say. Maria paused at the door. Victor said he was going to be honest with her, which was something he rarely did with anyone. He told her that when he first met her, he was just curious. Another puzzle to solve, another mystery to unravel. But now he genuinely cared about what happened to her. He pointed to the piano in the corner. He said that instrument was just wood and metal and strings. It had no power over her unless she gave it power. Her mother had not sacrificed everything so Maria could live in fear. She had sacrificed so Maria could fly. Maria felt her heart tighten. She told him he did not understand. She said it was not that simple. Victor said he knew it was not simple. Nothing important ever was. But he also knew that the only way to honor her mother's sacrifice was to try. Not to succeed necessarily, but to try. To face the fear instead of running from it. Maria left without answering, but Victor's words stayed with her. That night Maria could not sleep. She kept thinking about what Victor had said. Was she really honoring her mother by hiding from the piano? Her mother had wanted her to play. Every coin she had saved, every hour she had worked, was for that dream. And here Maria was, perfectly capable of playing, choosing not to. The next morning, Maria received news that changed everything. Victor Hammond had suffered a minor heart episode during the night. He was stable, but it was a warning. His heart was weaker than they had thought. The doctors adjusted his treatment, but they looked worried. When Maria came to his room that afternoon, Victor was lying in bed with his eyes closed. He looked older somehow, more fragile. The mighty billionaire was just a sick old man now. He opened his eyes when he heard her enter. He smiled weakly and made a joke. He asked if she had come to say goodbye already. Maria told him not to talk like that. She said he was going to be fine. Victor shook his head. He said he had made peace with death long ago. It did not scare him. What scared him was dying with regrets. He had too many of those already. He turned his head toward the piano. He told Maria that every night he dreamed about that piano. He dreamed that someone was playing it, filling his room with beautiful music. But when he woke up, there was only silence. Maria sat down beside him and took his hand. It was something nurses were not supposed to do, but she did not care anymore. She told him she was scared. Victor squeezed her hand gently. He said he knew. He said being scared was normal. But she should not let fear make decisions for her. That was no way to live. Maria looked at the piano for a long time. It sat there, black and shining, silent and waiting. For 11 years she had run from instruments like this one. She had avoided concerts, music stores, even movies with piano scenes. She had built her whole life around not facing this fear. And where had it gotten her? She was alone, working night shifts, living in a tiny apartment with no joy, no music, no life beyond survival. Her mother had wanted more for her than this. Maria made a decision. She told Victor she would try. She did not know if she could do it, but she would try. Victor's eyes lit up. It was the happiest she had ever seen him. He told her that was all he asked. Just try. Maria stood up and walked slowly toward the piano. Each step felt like walking through deep water. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her hands were cold and sweating. She reached the piano and stood there for a moment just looking at it. The keys were white and black, perfectly arranged, waiting for someone to bring them to life. She reached out and touched one key lightly. The note rang out in the quiet room, pure and clear. And then the fear came. It crashed over her like a wave. She saw the fire again, felt the heat, heard her own screams. She saw her mother lying in the street, covered in blood. She saw the letter from the Royal Academy, now ashes in a fire that had burned everything she owned. Maria pulled her hand back like the piano had burned her. She could not do it. She could not. She turned around to face Victor. Her face was wet with tears. She told him she was sorry. She said she could not do it. She said she was too broken. Victor did not look disappointed. He looked at her with compassion. He told her it was okay. He said Rome was not built in a day. He told her she had taken the first step by touching the key. Tomorrow, maybe she could take another step. Maria nodded, but she did not believe it. She left the room feeling like a failure. But Victor believed. He had seen something in that moment when she touched the piano. He had seen her eyes close, not in fear but in memory. Somewhere inside her, the music was still alive. He just had to find a way to bring it out. Victor Hammond may have been sick, but his mind was as sharp as ever. In his business career, he had solved problems that others said were impossible. He had turned failing companies into gold. He had negotiated deals that seemed hopeless. And now he had a new challenge, helping Maria find her music again. Over the following week, Victor started paying attention to everything Maria did. He noticed how she hummed softly while organizing his medicines. The melody was always the same, something slow and beautiful that he did not recognize. When he asked her about it, she seemed surprised. She said she was not aware she was humming. It was just something that happened automatically. Victor smiled to himself. The music was still inside her, trying to get out even when she did not realize it. He started a new approach. Instead of pushing Maria toward the piano, he began talking about music in a casual way. He told her stories about the concerts he had attended. He described famous pianists he had met over the years, people whose names Maria recognized from her training days. He spoke about music like it was just another topic of conversation, nothing scary, nothing demanding. Maria found herself relaxing during these talks. She even started sharing her own memories. She told Victor about Maestro, how he had a funny habit of closing his eyes and swaying when she played something he liked. She described the feeling of her first competition, how her hands had shaken so badly she thought she would fail. But then the music had taken over and everything else had disappeared. Victor listened carefully. He asked her to describe that feeling more. What did she mean when she said the music took over? Maria thought about it. She said it was like becoming invisible. When she played, she stopped existing as Maria. There was no poverty, no problems, no fear. There was only the music. It flowed through her like water through a pipe. She was not creating it, she was just letting it pass through. Victor nodded. He said that sounded like a gift. He asked why anyone would run from something so beautiful. Maria did not have an answer. One evening, Victor had a surprise for her. When Maria entered his room, she found the lights dimmed and soft piano music playing from a small speaker on his bedside table. It was Chopin, one of his nocturnes, played by a recording from decades ago. Maria froze at the door. Her first instinct was to leave, but something made her stay. The music was so beautiful, so gentle, it wrapped around her like a warm blanket on a cold night. She had not allowed herself to listen to piano music in years. She had forgotten how it made her feel. Victor watched her face carefully. He saw the fear come first, then something else, something like longing. He asked her who the pianist was on this recording. Maria listened for a moment. She said it was. She would recognize his touch anywhere. Maestro had played his recordings constantly during her lessons. Victor was impressed. He asked how she could tell just from the sound. Maria explained that every pianist had their own voice. It was like how every person's handwriting was different, had a particular warmth in his playing, a way of making the piano sing. Other pianists might play the same notes, but they would never sound exactly like him. Victor let the music continue. He did not push. He just let Maria stand there and listen. After the piece ended, Maria realized she had tears on her cheeks. She wiped them quickly and apologized. She said she did not know why she was crying. Victor told her she was crying because she missed it. He said her heart was trying to tell her something, and she should listen. Maria stayed longer that night. They listened to more recordings together. Victor asked her to explain what was happening in each piece, what made one performance different from another. Maria found herself talking more than she had talked in years. Words poured out of her about phrasing, dynamics, tempo, emotion. All the knowledge she had locked away came flooding back. By the end of the evening, Maria felt lighter somehow. The music had not hurt her. It had healed something just a little. The next day, Victor pushed a little further. He asked Maria if she would open the piano. Not play it, just open it. He wanted to look at the keys. He said it had been closed since they brought it to his room, and he was curious. Maria hesitated. Opening a piano was not the same as playing it. It should be safe. She walked over and lifted the lid, revealing the pristine white and black keys underneath. They were beautiful, perfectly maintained, waiting. Victor asked her to sit on the bench. Just sit. She did not have to do anything else. Maria sat down slowly. Her body remembered this position. Her back straightened automatically. Her feet found the pedals below without looking. Muscle memory from thousands of hours of practice. Victor asked her how it felt to sit there. Maria admitted it felt familiar. It felt like coming home. Victor smiled. He told her that was enough for today. Maria looked at him with confusion. She asked if he did not want her to try playing. Victor shook his head. He said there was no rush. He told her they had time. He said healing was not something that could be forced. It had to happen naturally, like a flower opening to the sun. Maria felt a strange emotion. It took her a moment to recognize it as gratitude. This difficult, demanding old man was being patient with her. He was giving her space to heal at her own pace. She thanked him quietly. Victor waved his hand dismissively. He said she should not thank him. He was selfish. He just wanted to hear her play before he died. Maria told him he was not going to die. Victor laughed softly. He said everyone died eventually. The only question was whether they left any music behind. The following days became a routine. Each evening, Maria would come to Victor's room and sit at the piano for a few minutes. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they listened to recordings, sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence. The piano remained silent, but it was no longer a threat. It was becoming a friend again. One night, Maria made a confession. She told Victor she had been dreaming about the piano. In her dreams, she was playing again, and the music was beautiful. But then she would wake up and remember that she could not play, and the sadness would crush her. Victor asked her an important question. He asked if she had ever actually tried to play since her hands healed. Really tried, not just touched one key and ran away. Maria thought about it. She realized the answer was no. Whenever she got close to a piano, the fear would stop her before she could even begin. She had never given herself a real chance. Victor leaned forward in his bed. He told her something she would never forget. He said fear was a liar. It promised to protect people, but all it really did was steal their lives. He said he had let fear steal too many years from him. Fear of losing money, fear of losing power, fear of being vulnerable. By the time he realized what fear had cost him, it was too late. He looked at her with intense eyes. He told her she still had time. She was young. She could still choose differently. Maria stared at the piano keys in front of her. Her hands were resting on her lap, trembling slightly. She lifted them slowly and placed them on the keys. The ivory felt cool and smooth under her fingers. She positioned her hands the way Maestro had taught her, curved gently, wrists relaxed. She pressed down on a key, then another, then another. A simple scale, the most basic exercise every pianist learned. C, D, E, F, G. Her fingers were stiff and clumsy. They did not move the way they used to, but they moved. They actually moved. Maria played the scale again, and this time she continued. G, A, B, C, an octave. Her left hand joined in, playing the same scale 1 octave lower. It was rough and uneven, nothing like the smooth flow she used to produce. But it was music, real music made by her own hands. She stopped and looked at her fingers in wonder. They worked. They actually worked. Victor was watching her with a huge smile on his face. He said nothing. He just let her have this moment. Maria tried something else. A simple melody, a song her mother used to sing to her as a child. She played it slowly, hesitantly, making mistakes and starting over. But bit by bit, the melody emerged from the piano, filling the room with its gentle sound. When she finished, Maria was crying again. But these were different tears. They were tears of joy, of relief, of healing. Victor finally spoke. He told her that was the most beautiful thing he had heard in years. Maria laughed through her tears. She said it was terrible. It was clumsy and full of mistakes. A child could play better. Victor disagreed firmly. He said it was beautiful because it was brave. He told her any fool could play a perfect scale, but it took true courage to play after years of fear and pain. That was what made it beautiful. Maria played for another hour that night. Simple things, exercises, and easy melodies, nothing complicated. But to her, it was a miracle. The fear was still there, lurking in the corners of her mind, but it was not in control anymore. She was. When she finally closed the piano and stood up, she felt different, taller somehow, stronger. Victor told her he was proud of her. He said not many people could face their deepest fears like she had just done. Maria walked over to his bed and, without thinking, leaned down and hugged him. It was completely unprofessional. Nurses did not hug patients, but Victor hugged her back, and for a moment they were just two human beings who had helped each other. Maria promised him she would play more tomorrow. She said she would practice every day until she could play something worthy of his ears. Victor told her he would hold her to that promise. From that night on, Maria practiced at Victor's piano every evening after her shift. She started with scales and exercises, rebuilding the strength and flexibility in her fingers. Then she moved to simple pieces, songs she had learned as a child. Each night, she got a little better. Victor was her only audience, and he was the best kind of audience. He never criticized, never complained, never compared her to who she used to be. He just listened with genuine appreciation, sometimes closing his eyes and smiling, sometimes tapping his finger on his bed in rhythm with the music. The other nurses noticed the change in Maria. She smiled more. She hummed openly in the hallways. She seemed lighter, happier, more alive. They did not know what had caused the change, and Maria did not explain. This was something private between her and Victor. But secrets in hospitals never stayed secrets for long. One of the night security guards heard piano music coming from room 501 and mentioned it to a colleague. The colleague told someone else. Soon, word spread through the hospital that the impossible Mr. Hammond had somehow gotten his nurse to play piano for him. The hospital administrator, doctor, heard about this and was not pleased. She called Maria to her office one morning and demanded an explanation. Maria told her the truth. She said Mr. Hammond had encouraged her to face her fear of playing, and she had been practicing in his room during her breaks. She was not neglecting her duties. She was playing on her own time. Doctor frowned. She said this was highly irregular. She reminded Maria that her job was to provide medical care, not musical entertainment. She warned her that if this interfered with her work in any way, there would be consequences. Maria promised it would not interfere. But when she returned to Victor's room and told him about the conversation, he became angry, not at Maria but at the administrator. He said small people were always threatened by anything they did not understand. He told Maria not to worry. He would handle it. Maria told him she did not want him to cause trouble. She said she needed her job. Victor smiled mysteriously. He said he was not going to cause trouble. He was going to make a phone call. The next day, Doctor received a call from the hospital's board of directors. She was informed that Mr. Hammond had made a generous donation to the hospital, $3 million for a new cardiac wing. He had also requested, as a personal favor, that his nurse be allowed to play piano in his room without interference. Given the size of the donation, the board thought this was a very reasonable request. Doctor never bothered Maria about the piano again. Victor laughed when Maria told him about the sudden change. He said money was a tool, and sometimes it was useful for cutting through nonsense. Maria shook her head in amazement. She told him he was impossible. Victor grinned. He said she should play him something in celebration. He requested. Maria sat at the piano and thought for a moment. Then she began to play. It was not perfect, not even close to what she could have done 11 years ago, but it was heartfelt and sincere. The notes filled the room and spilled out into the hallway, where a passing nurse stopped to listen with wonder. Victor closed his eyes and listened. For the first time in 15 years, piano music did not make him think of loss. It made him think of hope. Maybe it was not too late for either of them. 2 months had passed since Maria first touched Victor's piano. In that time, something remarkable had happened. Her playing had improved at a pace that surprised even herself. The muscle memory that had been sleeping for 11 years was waking up, stretching, coming back to life. Her fingers were remembering movements they had made thousands of times before, and more importantly, the fear was shrinking. It was still there, a small dark spot in the corner of her mind, but it no longer controlled her. Victor's health was another story. Despite the best doctors and the most expensive treatments, his heart was failing. The minor episode from weeks ago had been followed by another, then another. Each one left him weaker. He spent more time sleeping now, conserving what little energy he had. But he never missed Maria's evening concerts. Even on his worst days, when he could barely keep his eyes open, he insisted she play. One evening, Victor called Maria closer to his bed. His voice was weaker than usual. He told her he had been thinking about something. He said he wanted to give her a gift, but he did not know if she would accept it. Maria told him she did not need any gifts. She said he had already given her something priceless. He had given her back her music. Victor smiled tiredly. He said that was not his gift. That was her gift to herself. He had just helped her unwrap it. He reached under his pillow and pulled out an envelope. It was old and yellowed, with something thick inside. He handed it to Maria and told her to open it. Maria opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a photograph and a letter. The photograph showed a young woman with dark hair and bright eyes holding a violin. She was standing on a stage, smiling at the camera. On the back of the photo, someone had written, Carnegie Hall, 1978. Maria looked at Victor with questions in her eyes. Victor explained that was his wife on the night of her only professional performance. She had been invited to play at a small concert at Carnegie Hall, a huge honor for a young violinist. It should have been the beginning of a brilliant career. He paused to catch his breath. Speaking was becoming harder for him. He continued, saying he had convinced her not to pursue music. He had told her his business needed her more, that she could always return to music later. But later never came. She put down her violin and never picked it up again. Maria looked at the photograph of the beautiful young woman. She could see the joy and hope in her eyes. It broke her heart to know what came next. Victor pointed to the letter. He told her to read it. Maria unfolded the letter carefully. It was written in elegant handwriting that had faded with time. The letter was from to Victor, dated just a few weeks before her death. The letter said that had no regrets about their life together. She said the years with Victor had been full of love and adventure, but she had one wish, one thing she hoped Victor would do after she was gone. She asked him to find someone whose music had been silenced and help them play again. She said that would be the greatest gift he could give to her memory. Maria read the letter 3 times. Tears were falling onto the paper, and she quickly moved it away so she would not damage it. She looked at Victor and understood everything now. She understood why he had pushed her so hard, why he cared so much about her playing. It was not just about her. It was about keeping a promise to the woman he had loved. She asked him why he had waited so long to show her this letter. Victor said he had been scared. He admitted that even dying old men could be cowards. He said showing her the letter meant admitting what he had done too. He had been ashamed. Maria put the letter down and took his hand. She told him he had kept his promise. She said would be proud. Victor squeezed her hand weakly. He said there was one more thing. He told her about a charity event that his company held every year. It was a concert to raise money for children's music education. The best musicians in the city performed. This year's event was in 3 weeks. Maria already knew what he was going to ask. Her stomach tightened with fear. Victor asked her to perform at the event. Maria tried to protest. She said she was not ready. She said she had only been playing for 2 months. She said she would embarrass herself and him. Victor shook his head slowly. He said she was ready. He had been listening to her play every night and he knew talent when he heard it. She was not the same as she was at 17, but she was still extraordinary. And more importantly, she had something now that she did not have then. She had survived pain. She had overcome fear. That gave her music a depth and power that young players never had. Maria said she could not do it. She said the thought of playing in public made her want to run and hide. Victor asked her if she remembered what her mother had wanted for her. He asked if her mother had saved all that money so Maria could hide in hospitals for the rest of her life. He asked if Maestro had spent 10 years teaching her so she could play for an audience of one sick old man. Each question hit Maria like a hammer. She knew the answers. Her mother had wanted her to share her gift with the world. Maestro had always said that music was meant to be shared, not hoarded. Victor continued gently. He told her he might not be alive to see her perform. His doctors had told him how serious his condition was, but it would give him peace to know she had agreed. He said he would die happy knowing that music would not be silenced again. Maria looked into his tired eyes. She saw how much this meant to him. She thought about who had given up her dream for love. She thought about her mother, who had sacrificed everything for a future that never came. She thought about Maestro, who had seen something special in a poor girl from a poor neighborhood. All of them had believed in her. All of them had given something precious for her. How could she refuse now? She told Victor she would do it. She would perform at the concert. Victor's face lit up with joy. He thanked her. He said she had no idea how much this meant to him. Maria said she had one condition. She asked if she could choose the piece she would perform. Victor said of course. He asked what she was thinking. Maria told him she wanted to play Chopin's Ballade No. 1. It was the piece she had planned to play at her entrance audition for the Royal Academy. She had practiced it for a whole year before the fire. She had never gotten to perform it. Victor nodded approvingly. He said that was a perfect choice. He said it was beautiful and challenging and full of emotion, just like her. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of Maria's life. She practiced every moment she could spare. She came to Victor's room early and stayed late. She played until her fingers ached, then she played more. The ballade was difficult, one of the most demanding pieces in the piano repertoire. Her fingers stumbled over the fast passages and struggled with the complicated rhythms. But day by day she improved. The piece began to take shape under her hands. It started to breathe, to live, to speak. Maria poured everything she had into it. All her pain, all her loss, all her hope, all her love. The music became a container for everything she could not say in words. Victor listened to her progress every night. He was getting weaker. The doctors had moved him to a special monitoring unit with machines tracking his every heartbeat. But he insisted on being wheeled to his room each evening so Maria could play for him. Sometimes, when she finished practicing, she would find him with tears on his cheeks. He never explained why he was crying. He did not need to. The music said everything. 1 week before the concert, Victor's daughter arrived at the hospital. Her name was, and she was a severe-looking woman in her 50s who seemed uncomfortable with emotions. She had been running her father's companies while he was sick and did not approve of his newfound interest in piano music or his attachment to a nurse. Cornered Maria in the hallway and demanded to know what was going on. She accused Maria of taking advantage of a dying old man. She threatened to have her fired, blacklisted, and even arrested if she did not stay away from her father. Maria listened calmly. She told that she cared about Victor and would never do anything to hurt him. She explained about the piano, about's letter, about the promise Victor was trying to keep. His face changed as she listened. Some of the hardness melted away. She admitted that she knew about her mother's sacrifice. She said her father had carried that guilt for years. She just did not know he was trying to make amends. Maria asked to let her play at the concert. She said it would mean everything to Victor. It might be the last thing he asked for. Was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. She said she would not interfere. She even offered to make sure Maria had the best piano at the concert hall. The night before the concert, Maria visited Victor one last time. He was very weak now. The machines around him beeped and hummed constantly. His breathing was shallow and labored, but his eyes were clear, and when he saw Maria, he smiled. Maria sat beside him and held his hand. She told him she was scared about tomorrow. She said she had not performed in public in over 11 years. What if she forgot everything? What if she froze on stage? Victor squeezed her hand with what little strength he had. He told her to listen carefully because he did not have the energy to repeat himself. He said fear would always be there. It was part of being human. The goal was not to eliminate fear but to act anyway. He said courage was not the absence of fear but the decision that something else was more important. He asked her what was more important than her fear. Maria thought about it. She said her mother was more important. Maestro was more important, was more important. The music itself was more important. All the people who had given up something so she could play, they were more important. Victor nodded. He said she should remember that tomorrow when she walked onto that stage. She should play for them. She should play for the poor mother who washed clothes until her hands bled. She should play for the old teacher who gave free lessons to a girl with a gift. She should play for the young violinist who sacrificed her dreams for love. She should play for all the silent musicians in the world who never got their chance. Maria promised she would. Victor closed his eyes. He told her he was tired but happy. He said whatever happened tomorrow, he had already won. He had kept his promise too. He had helped someone find their music again. Maria kissed his forehead gently. She told him she would make him proud. Victor did not open his eyes. He just smiled. The next evening, Maria stood backstage at the concert hall. She was wearing a simple black dress that one of the other nurses had helped her pick out. Her hands were shaking, and her heart was racing. Through the curtain, she could hear the murmur of the audience, hundreds of wealthy patrons who had paid thousands of dollars to attend. A stagehand told her she had 5 minutes. Maria closed her eyes and tried to breathe. She thought about Victor, lying in his hospital bed, probably watching the clock, imagining her on stage. She thought about her mother, who had never seen the inside of a concert hall, but who had made this moment possible. She thought about Maestro, who had seen the potential in a skinny 8-year-old and had nurtured it with patience and love. She thought about all the years of hiding, all the fear, all the pain, and she realized something. This moment was not about proving herself. It was not about impressing the audience or launching a comeback career. It was about completing a circle. It was about saying thank you to everyone who had believed in her. The stagehand told her it was time. Maria walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding at first and she could not see the audience. She walked toward the grand piano sitting in the center of the stage. It was beautiful, black and shining, the finest instrument she had ever seen. She sat down on the bench and adjusted the height. She placed her hands on her lap and looked out at the audience. Slowly, her eyes adjusted and she could see faces. Hundreds of faces, all watching her, waiting. For a moment, the fear threatened to overwhelm her. Her hands started to tremble. Her mind went blank. She could not remember a single note of the piece she had practiced for weeks. And then she saw something. In the front row, there was an empty seat with a small photograph propped up on it. It was the photograph of the one Victor had given her. Beside the photograph sat Victor's daughter, watching Maria with an expression that was almost kind. Maria understood. Victor had asked to bring the photograph. Even though he could not be there, he had found a way to be present, and was there too, watching over her, waiting to hear the music she had never gotten to play. Maria took a deep breath. She raised her hands and placed them on the keys. And she began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 floated out into the concert hall. They were soft and questioning, like someone waking from a long sleep. Maria let the music take her, just as she had described to Victor weeks ago. She stopped being Maria, the scared nurse. She became a vessel for something larger, something beautiful. The music built slowly, growing in intensity and complexity. Maria's fingers flew over the keys, remembering movements they had made 1,000 times in another life. There were a few small mistakes, moments where her fingers stumbled or hesitated. But she did not stop. She kept playing, letting the imperfections become part of the performance. The audience sat in stunned silence. They had expected another polished professional, another flawless performance. What they got was something different. They got raw emotion. They got truth. They got the sound of a human being pouring her entire soul into music. Maria reached the climax of the piece, a thunderous passage that required every ounce of strength and skill. Her hands moved faster than she thought possible. The piano sang and cried and shouted under her fingers. For one glorious moment, she was 17 again, standing on the edge of everything, ready to fly. And then the final notes came, soft and slow, fading away like a dream at dawn. Maria held the last chord for a long moment, letting it hang in the air. Then she lifted her hands from the keys. For several seconds, there was complete silence. Then the applause began. It started slowly, a few people clapping, then more, then the whole audience. People rose to their feet. The applause grew into a roar that filled the concert hall and made the walls vibrate. Maria sat at the piano with tears streaming down her face. She did not know if she was crying from relief or joy or exhaustion, maybe all three. She stood up and bowed awkwardly, not used to accepting applause anymore. In the front row, was crying too. She clutched the photograph of her mother and watched this strange nurse who had somehow connected to her family's deepest wounds and started to heal them. After the concert, Maria rushed back to the hospital. She needed to tell Victor how it had gone. She needed him to know she had done it. When she reached his room, it was empty. The bed was made and all the machines were gone. Her heart stopped. A doctor appeared behind her. He said he was sorry. He explained that Mr. Hammond had passed away about an hour ago. It was peaceful. He had fallen asleep listening to something on his phone. When the nurse checked on him, he was gone with a smile on his face. Maria could barely speak. She asked what he had been listening to. The doctor handed her Victor's phone. On the screen was a recording that someone had sent him. It was labeled "Live from the Concert Hall." Must have recorded Maria's performance and sent it to her father in real time. Victor had heard her play. He had heard the whole thing. He had died listening to her music. Maria sank into a chair and cried like she had not cried in years. She cried for Victor, who had found redemption in his final days. She cried for who had finally received her gift. She cried for her mother and Maestro and the girl she used to be. And somewhere in the middle of all that grief, she felt something else. She felt gratitude. She felt peace. Victor Hammond had forced a poor nurse to face her fears. He had pushed her, challenged her, believed in her when she did not believe in herself. He had given her back the greatest gift of her life. And in return, she had given him music. She had helped him keep a promise to the woman he loved. She had let him die in peace. 2 weeks after Victor's death, his lawyer contacted Maria. He informed her that Victor had left her something in his will. It was the grand piano from his hospital room, the one where she had rediscovered her gift. He had also established a scholarship fund in her name, providing free music lessons to underprivileged children in the Philippines. The lawyer also gave her a letter that Victor had written in his final days. Maria read it alone in her small apartment, with the piano now sitting in the corner where her sad life used to be. The letter said that Victor had made many mistakes in his life, but meeting Maria was not one of them. He thanked her for reminding him that it was never too late to change. He thanked her for letting him keep his promise too, and he asked her for one final thing. He asked her to never stop playing. He asked her to share her music with the world, the way she had shared it with him. He said music was too precious to be hidden. It was meant to be given away. Maria put down the letter and looked at the piano. It was waiting for her, patient and silent, full of possibilities. She sat down and began to play. This time she was not afraid. Maria Santos went on to become a music teacher, working with children from poor families who showed promise. She never performed professionally again, choosing instead to pass on what Maestro had given her. But sometimes, late at night, she would play just for herself. She would play Chopin and she would play the songs her mother used to sing. And sometimes, when the music was especially beautiful, she could almost feel them with her. Her mother standing behind her with proud tears in her eyes, Maestro swaying with his eyes closed, Victor smiling his gruff smile. And finally hearing the music she had given up so long ago. They were all there in every note she played, and they always would be.